Hey guys. If you hear typing, I'm setting everything up. How's everyone doing today? Sorry. Okay, I think everything's set up now, so now I can focus. Hello. Hello. Where's everybody from? I always like to know where everybody's at. If you're on TikTok, this is like super annoying. I have this like ceiling fan above my head, but I don't really have a good. I moved like a couple weeks ago, so I don't really have. I haven't quite figured out like the best spot to go live in my house yet, but it looks okay on Facebook because you can't really see it. But from Holland, oh my gosh, hi! From Texas, New Hampshire, Phoenix, Arizona, Florida, from the UK. We're all over the place today. So if you're hopping in on TikTok, I have a poll going. You can vote on what we want to talk about today. If you're on Facebook and YouTube, you can just put it in the comments. I have it across the screen, just so I can kind of get an idea of what everybody would like to speak about today. If y'all don't know, just a little announcement too. I don't even have a copy of it because it's that brand new, but I have a new reflection journal that is out. It's called the Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit Reflection Journal. It can go with my course, but it can also just be like a standalone thing. It's a 7-week journal, and it just guides you through stuff like emotional management, managing your triggers, breaking up, like overcoming rumination, like all the stuff that we struggle with afterwards. If you go to the link on my bio in any of my sites, you can find it on there on Amazon, or I have a PDF copy as well. But I'm really excited. That's the latest thing that's been launched, and hopefully no more big projects for a while because I like to do this thing where I overstretch myself and have too many things going on at one time. But if you have any questions on that, don't hesitate to send me a DM. Like I said, it's so new, I don't even have my own copy of it yet. But Pennsylvania. Do I have any tips about going to court? So I'm like one of the first people to acknowledge if I have basic knowledge on things versus like, oh, I'm a really good resource for this. When it comes to court, I'll be honest, I'm not the best resource for that just because I didn't have to go through that. People that I would recommend to follow and reach out to that have dealt with that, that I know for a fact, Stronger Than Before. She's really good on that topic because she's dealt with it quite a bit. I know Roller Coaster of Love. She's dealt with that, and then La Disco Mama. All of them are highly recommended by me to talk about it and to get specific tips. I can give general stuff on it. So if you have a general question, I can't answer that. But I'd rather tell you who's a good resource on that than to give you basic stuff, if that makes sense. Um, and then someone just said on TikTok, Family Court Corner on TikTok might be good too. So you can check that out. Thank you for that. So again, I'm always going to be honest. Again, I'd rather say I'm probably not the best resource. I'm a pretty good resource on a lot of things, but the court side, not as much, just because I never had to deal with that. So I will tell you one thing I do know: keep as much communication with them as possible written, like not on the phone, not in person, like written, so you have proof of everything that has been said. That's just a good general rule. Um, Sorry, catching up in comments. Y'all know if y'all been on my lives, you know I'll go silent for a second because I'm just like reading everything. um, So why would an unfaithful narcissist want to contest divorce? It is just kind of funny that they do stuff like this because, and a lot, here's the thing. There's several reasons to this. Number one, they're always the victim, so it's never their fault. Like, even when it comes to cheating, they always have some sort of excuse, or they blame it on you, or like, well, I've even heard clients tell me that they were told like, "Oh, I cheated on you because I loved you so much." What? Um, so they just will say ridiculous stuff. But the other part of this is that narcissists in general and just extremely toxic people, they contest divorce, period, because the way that they look at their supply and the way that they look at us, it's not this like mutual love like what you and I deal with or what we have for people. It's an ownership kind of love. Like it's kind of like when you get a new phone and you say, "Oh my gosh, I love this phone." It's that kind of love. So in their mind, in the back of their mind, like they always own you. Even if you leave, even if you do, there's always a portion of you that they have ownership over. And the divorce and all that kind of stuff, like that's like the ultimate failure for them because that means they're A, losing power and control, and B, they're losing ownership. So it's just a very sick, twisted mindset that they have on that. Okay, let me see how we're doing on the poll. So far, oh, no contact seems to be pretty popular on the poll today. Oh, I could talk a lot about that. My no contact journey was a journey, quite literally. So that's an easy one for me to talk about. Oh, while we're waiting for the poll, I think I've seen a couple questions come up about dreams. Dreams, that those are tough. Now, I am not an expert on the psychological background of dreams. I have studied it a little bit, but I'm not an expert. I'm going to say that right up front. But I think I know how do I want to word this. For me, dreams are kind of a way that our subconscious is processing because sometimes there are events or things that we remember or just our experiences that it's almost like too painful for our conscious mind to bring up, or maybe in a way we're not quite ready for our conscious mind to bring it up. And so when you're sleeping, you're at rest, so your subconscious brings these things into the forefront. Like there was a particular instance where I kept replaying certain parts in a dream. And it was because I know it was because I was trying to process it. And sometimes like I think dreams can reveal things to you as well. But it is also, if you're dealing with like traumatic dreams, like that is just a common side effect of PTSD, is you're just reliving that traumatic experience. But I think a big part of it is there are so many things that we are left to process and deal with after we get out of these relationships that it's like overwhelming and too much for the conscious mind to deal with. um, so we dream about it, and sometimes maybe that's the way that our subconscious like reveals this thing to you, like, hey, there's still this that we need to work on, hey, there's still this we need to process, or it's just the safest way for you to process it because you're asleep and you're dreaming. So it is very common. This is one of the things that it slowly goes away with time and work. Like, and that's why I put together the journal that I have and the course that I have, because a lot of times, like what I struggled with is that I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't have a plan, and I was going to therapy every week, and I was a wreck, and I just was desperate to feel normal again, and I just needed somebody to tell me what to do. So I kept doing all this trial and error stuff, and once I found things that worked for me, and I was actually working dealing with my emotions and managing my triggers and processing everything and reaching acceptance instead of trying to reach understanding. And I kept working that. Like, honestly, it took me like 6 to 8 weeks, and it was diligent work every single day. And so that's why I create the course, because it breaks it all down. Like I have one section that's about managing your emotions. I have one section that explains like what happens to your brain in these relationships and why we deal with things like flashbacks and dreams, and kind of how you can correct those things. There's a lot of like cognitive retraining in my course, like how to stop this thought, deal with it, redirect yourself, because it was the mental hurdles that were the hardest part for me. So if you are struggling with just like not knowing what to do, but you're like ready to do something and shift out of that education phase, I highly recommend the course because it helps you do that. It helps you take the same mental energy that you have, um, to educate on narcissism and trying to understand and redirect it into starting to do things that are meaningful to you and start to process things and not ignore your triggers, but learn how to manage them and not ignore your emotions, but learn how to manage them. It walks you through it step by step and gives you very, very easy to follow strategies. So I highly recommend it. If you have questions on it, please do just send me a DM. I'll answer any questions that you've got. But that's why I created it and that's what it's for. I've not seen that on Netflix. I honestly don't watch a whole lot of TV, and when I do watch TV, it's usually the same show. I watch Mom a lot, if you've ever seen Mom. It's a hilarious show, and then I watch Schitt's Creek a lot. I've been told that I have decided, sorry, this is so off topic, has nothing to do with anything, but I have decided that I present myself as Patrick, if you've ever seen Schitt's Creek, but internally, like my inner voice is 100% David. Absolutely. Your videos have helped me so much recently. I just want to say thank you. Well, I appreciate that. I always tell people like I'm sorry you can relate to my content because that means we have a similar experience. But I'm glad it's also um, brought some sort of validation and clarity. So I really appreciate that. Um, Someone asked if I know what reactive abuse is. I do know that term. I'm not a huge fan of that term. I understand what it's about, but I don't like the word reactive abuse because it's just essentially where like what it's referring to is it's you being pushed. Every human being has their limit. Like you can only deal with so much. And when you're dealing with these narcissistic and toxic people, like we are constantly guarding ourselves and we're tolerating so many things that we shouldn't be tolerated and we're having basic needs unmet and like all this stuff. And eventually you're just pushed to your breaking point to where you just explode. Um, and that's not being abusive. That is being that is being a normal human being that can only take so much crap from one person until you just lose your mind. But what happens is when we do reach that breaking point, it's used against us like we're the abusive people or like we're the problem because and it's almost kind of like they sit back and watch it happen, almost like a painter admiring their work. It's like finally got him, or they'll record you when you're reacting because they know when you're about to lose it. They'll like record you, all that stuff. It's another form of power and control and manipulation. So I don't like the term reactive abuse because you're not being abusive. You're being reactionary to the abuse that you're dealing with. I'm having a hard time in a new relationship. Ooh, girl, I get it. With my past being with a narcissist. So how do you do it? Okay, so dating again. Oh man, I need to do like a whole. Honestly, I could do like a whole freaking master class on dating again because it is such a struggle. Like even when you've done so much healing, like this is the this. Oh hey, there's another Trey. Okay, I have to ask: are you a third, or are you like a real Trey? I have to ask that. Sorry, I got distracted. I have like real ADD brain sometimes. So when you're dating again, here's the thing: like no matter, and this is not to be discouraging. This is just to tell you something that I wish that I had known. The one thing that my therapist did warn me about that I highly appreciated was when you get out of these toxic relationships, you know, there's extreme highs and extreme lows, and we get addicted to that chaos and they feel very exciting, especially because of the extreme highs. So when you get into a healthy relationship, it can feel boring because you don't have these extreme highs, extreme lows. It's more of a consistent pattern. Well, this isn't like if you're going to an amusement park, the rides that are like this aren't nearly as exciting as the rides that are like this, right? So it makes sense why these relationships are exciting and they are addictive because of these extreme highs. Well, a healthy relationship with this healthy dynamic, it can feel very boring. And sometimes, like, what we have to be careful of is what we can see as sparks can actually be red flags. And that's the really frustrating part. And what can seem boring can just be the beginning of something that's healthy. So that was absolutely needed advice that I got. Pause for a second. You're an original Trey. I'm a fake one. I'm a third. It's a nickname. So props to you for being the OG. But so back on topic. Welcome to my brain, y'all. It's a very fun place to be. So even with that said, once you've done a lot of healing and you recognize this stuff, there are still, this is why I think it is so important. I know it is so important that you learn how to manage your triggers during the healing phase first, because there's going to be a whole set of triggers that are going to happen when you get into a new relationship that you aren't even going to be sure what they are. They're just going to come up. And it's because you're taking that step again. And it's because you're being vulnerable again. And this doesn't just apply for romantic relationships. This also applies for friendships, or if you're starting a new job or getting yourself out there in a new environment, anything that you're doing to kind of get going again, it's going to happen. And that's not to discourage anybody, and it's not to like be a Debbie Downer. It's just very real. So if you don't learn how to manage your triggers before you get into a new relationship, then the new relationship is going to be even more challenging for you, because not only are you navigating a new relationship, you're also trying to figure out how to navigate and manage these triggers. And unfortunately, you can't avoid all of them. You just have to learn how to manage them. And that's why, like, I have a whole week in my course and my reflection journal about learning how to manage your triggers, because you have to be able to break them down into 3 phases, which is like, what is the trigger? What's this trigger telling me? And how I'm responding. And so the course and the journal kind of walk you through how to correct your belief system about the triggers so you can reduce their intensity. So again, that's called the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery. Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Toolkit. There's a course and a journal. You can either do them both together or you can do them independently. But I remember telling my now fiance when we first started dating, I was like, I was really careful with what I told him at the beginning. I didn't go into details about what happened in the past relationship. I just said it was very toxic. There was cheating and a lot of lying involved, and I learned a lot from it. And that's all I want to tell you right now. I'm going to kind of work on a need to know basis. That's all that I told him at first. The other thing I told him was, and because of what I went through, I know I'm going to get triggered. I don't know what they are, but when they do happen and when they do pop up, I will let you know. And that was my need to know basis criteria, is if I got triggered. It's not, I didn't want him to feel like my triggers were my responsibility, but I did want him to at least understand why I got triggered. So that way, when I was walking through that process, if it were to happen again, he knew it wasn't about him, it was about what I went through, and that he could see that I was actively working on it. So over time, yes, I did end up telling him pretty much everything that happened, but he had to earn that right also. I'm pretty cautious about just telling my life story. Well, it's ironic because I'm a social media creator and all I do is sit here and talk about this. But like within people in my life, and especially in a dating scene, I wasn't doing this back then. Anyways, I'm sorry. People have to earn the right to kind of know your history and know your past, especially because like extremely narcissistic and toxic people are going to hold that crap against you. So it was probably over the course of like a year where he started to learn about everything. So that's kind of the general about it. If you have other specific questions on dating, I can for sure go into that too. Okay, let's see what I just clicked a button and I don't think it did anything. That's a very dramatic reaction to clicking a button. Okay, so the top 2 on the poll, which it's about to close, is obsessive thinking and no contact. 2 of my favorite topics. Thank y'all for the roses. Sorry, I just saw that. I have it where like the comments are on here, so unless I scroll over, I can't see that stuff. But thank you. I just saw that those popped up. Okay, so I would like, this will just kind of help me know and what direction to go with this. So when it comes to, let's talk about like no contact first. So when it comes to no contact, comment on here if you are currently, let's do this. Comment on here like with either like a thumbs up or something like that if you are not no contact, but you're trying to go no contact and you're having difficulty with that. Let me just kind of get an idea of where everybody's at. So let's start with that one. So like put an emoji or say hello or whatever it might be if you aren't no contact, but you're wanting to go. No, I do not have NPD. I am a survivor of narcissistic abuse. Or maybe like you've tried going no contact, but you're like just having a trouble keeping it. I have a couple. I have to give it a second because I know there's a delay. So I am no contact. He keeps creeping his way back in. Oh, that happens. No contact was broken. Difficult to go no contact with my abuser because they have a child together. Okay, that's understandable. Um, okay, let's do this too. Um, I have no contact, but I'm scared when he gets released from prison. I've actually had a couple people message me about that too. Um, can you clarify what you're asking about the narcissistic addictions? Like, what do I think about what on those? Sorry, if you had a previous comment, I missed it. So here's my question, or I guess my thought. A lot of times, like no contact and obsessive thinking can work together because like it's hard to go no contact with someone that you're obsessively thinking about, or it's hard to stay no contact when you're constantly thinking about them and you're dealing with the lack of closure and all of that. So is that kind of something that would be good to talk about, kind of like combining those two in that way? Y'all let me know, because that's kind of the route that I was thinking about going, because they really do play a role together, at least in my experience. Okay, some very emphatic yeses. Okay, what about you guys like on Facebook and YouTube? Most definitely. Okay. Okay, we can do that. I feel like I obsess over everyone and everything after dealing with abuse. Is that normal? Yes. Part of that's also hypervigilance, which is often confused for paranoia after abuse. Because if you think about it, this is actually something that I talk about in my group coaching, because I run a group, a 4-week group coaching called Unshackled and Set Free. And one of our weeks is actually on anxiety and paranoia. And I don't like saying that we get paranoid after we leave an abuser, because by definition of what paranoia is, we're not paranoid. Because, and I'm summing this up, paranoia is essentially an unjustified worry or an unjustified mistrust of people. Like that's essentially what the definition of paranoia is. We're not dealing with that. Like our worry and untrust of people is not unjustified, it's very justified. So, and I don't like saying that we are paranoid, but we are hyper vigilant. Like we're constantly thinking about things and questioning people's motives and not trusting people. Or like my favorite that I dealt with all the time is when I would drive, and he drove kind of a standard white Toyota Camry. So anytime, and those are like all over the road where I'm at. So anytime I would see that car, I would get into this fight or flight while I was driving. And it's not because I was paranoid, it's because I was hypervigilant. So I don't like that word because it has a negative connotation to it. Um, so so okay, so kind of dealing like y'all oh, words. So dealing with like what y'all were talking about. Oh, you know what? Dang it. I meant to grab my energy drink before I started this, and now I'm all plugged up and everything, and I don't want to walk. Okay, anyways. I'm telling y'all, my brain is a fun place to be in. Um, okay, so why obsessive thinking and no contact work really well, or not work well together? Oh my God, they kind of have this cyclical relationship with each other, and essentially what that means is it's kind of like, well, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Like it's hard to go no contact with someone that you don't have closure with, or that you have all these unanswered questions with, or they're constantly still manipulating you. And it's also hard to keep no contact with somebody that you're obsessively thinking about. So they really do have this cyclical relationship with each other. So here's the thing, the first thing that I do want to say is yes, I do strongly believe in no contact, and I believe in the power of no contact. But I'm also very empathetic to, I know how hard that is, because I could not just go no contact. It and I was having, my therapist was telling me, like recommended me to do it. I had family members telling me, and it got to the point where it was like I was having shame attached to it, because I was still in contact with him, but because I knew everybody around me was like, "You need to stop talking to him. You're just causing yourself more damage and you're hurting yourself," because they were saying this and I knew how they felt. I also didn't feel like I could talk to them about what was currently going on with them because they were telling me I should go no contact. Are y'all tracking with me? Like, because so it was increasing this sense of isolation. And I was like, I felt very shameful about the fact that I couldn't go no contact because I logically knew that they were right. But for me, no contact just felt, it felt very mean. Like I had never had to do that with someone in my life. I had had relationships just naturally phase out. I had had people that we just kind of grew apart, and even past relationships, like even if it didn't necessarily end on the greatest of terms, like we were able to be cordial and all of that, I had never had to like cut someone out of my life like so intensely, and it just felt very mean. Like that's the only word that I can come up with. So I really really struggled with this concept. But I will tell you, um but I will tell you this. um when I just started to like not like no contact was like this mountain that I felt like I could not climb. But the more that I started to work on myself and the more that I started to do things that were meaningful for me, and what I mean, I was doing things that like filled my cup, if you've ever heard that phrase. So I was like spending more time with friends and family. Sorry, I'm seeing y'all's questions. If I don't like finish my point, I will forget it because that's how my brain works. So I promise, like when I'm done with my spiel, I'll scroll through and start answering some questions. So y'all don't think I'm ignoring you. Um, but anyway, so like no contact just seemed like this big task that I didn't feel like I could accomplish. But the more that I was working on myself and I started to do things like working out again and spending quality time with my family, spending quality time with my friends. Now, mind you, this was also during the COVID shutdown. I left him in May of 2020. So the world was shut down still. So I was having like FaceTime dates with my friends. I was journaling every single day. Like I just started to do things that just poured back into me. The more that I was doing that, it subconsciously was working on my self worth. And the more that I started to rebuild my sense of self, even though I was still in contact with him because he was pushing really hard for us to stay friends. And I fell for that completely. The more I started to continue to see just how manipulative he was. Like he kept busting himself. It's funny how they like lose track of what they've lied about. And so I would catch him in certain lies. And there was like other things that happened to where I figured out that he was still lying and manipulating and essentially competing with me. I started to see him for more of who he was. And I started to see and realize what would physically happen to me in my body anytime that I spoke with him. Because I would literally have an anxiety response, whether the conversation went good or bad. I would get flush. My heart rate would start going up because I knew that the conversation could turn on a dime at any point in time. Like it could be going great, and then 2 seconds later it could be bad, and being screamed out through text and like all that kind of stuff. So I was constantly in this like heightened state of like alertness and walking on eggshells and just kind of waiting for the shoe to drop in every conversation. And I just kind of really would sit in the fact of like how this made me feel anytime I spoke to him. So when I started to realize this, I still was having trouble with the whole concept of just cutting out. So I said, okay, what do I feel like I can accomplish? So the first thing that I did was I said, I'm no longer going to talk to him on the phone. I don't want to hear his voice. I actually want to get to the point where I forget what his voice sounds like. So I said, no more talking on the phone. And I kept with that. Then my next road or milestone was, okay, I'm going to wait an hour before I respond to his text message because I was very trained in the relationship. Like I had to respond immediately. Like, and if I didn't, I was doing something wrong or like, whatever. So that was really difficult for me. Like I had to put a timer on my phone and I let it go that first hour and I was dying that whole time. And then yep, as soon as the timer was on, I did text him back, but I made it for that hour. So then once that started to get more comfortable, then it was like, okay, I'm going to wait longer, whatever it was. So I was constantly like, okay, if I can't do the whole thing, what can I do? But what gave me the strength to do that was the work that I was putting in on myself. And so I like the way that I was starting to work on like my self-deprecating talk, because that's very big when it comes to obsessive thinking, because we start to think about the relationship with like more clarity and non rose colored glasses, and then we remember things that we went through, and we start to say things like, oh my god, I was such an idiot, like why did I put up with this, why did I put up with that. um, and so I really started to work on that. I started to correct my thoughts. I started to not ignore my emotions, but not get them into dwelling. And honestly, like that's like a whole thing in itself, like all of the stuff that I'm talking about. So as I was doing that, it was constantly giving me the strength to take further steps in no contact. And like I said, it just got to the point where I was like, there's nothing that he could really offer me to make my life better. There's just not. He's not capable of it. Um, and it just was very evident that he was never going to not be this lying, manipulative person. And I don't even want a friendship like that. So as I started to just work on myself and see more of who he was, um, and the other reason I was staying in no contact was because he owed me money. And so he was paying me money every month. And it got to the point where he was like dragging out the last payment that he owed me. And I was like, it's just it's not even worth it. Like it's this amount of money is not even worth me having to continue to fight this and talk to him again. So I just blocked him. Like at that point, I was just done. I didn't tell him. I didn't say anything. I blocked his number. And so it took me a total of about 5 months to completely go no contact. It was very much a journey, but because of the obsessive thinking, it does make no contact really hard, which is why it is really important to be able to get control back over your thoughts, which I know is easier said than done. But again, that like if that is something that you're struggling with, you need to do my course, and it because that was the hardest thing for me to get over was the obsessive thinking, and it breaks it down into like week by week strategies that you can implement and take your time with it. And I did it in the exact order that I was dealing with it with myself. So it literally walks you through this whole pattern, and it gives you like, it also gives you information that I got in grad school that would have been so helpful back in the day, specifically with triggers, because triggers was the one thing that I really didn't have help with and didn't, I tried to deal with them through sheer willpower, and it did not go very well. So, if anything, getting that help with the triggers, it would have been life changing for me at the moment. Oh my gosh! Thanks for the crown. I don't even know what that does, but that's cool. Um, so, if you are dealing with the obsessive thinking, you need to do my course and just go through it week by week. Take the time, implement the strategies, trust the process. It's a combination of time and work. Um, and like I said, it's called the Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit, and it's there's either the course or there's the journal, either one. And if you have questions on it, just send me a DM and I can answer any questions that you've got. Okay, sorry, I went on a rant for a while, so let me back up and try to answer some questions because I saw some that popped in. So one person had asked, is it normal to ask yourself if you were the narcissist after getting out of these relationships? And absolutely it is, because they're essentially trying to convince you that you were the problem throughout it. Okay, so I had a couple questions on this, and I hope you're still here if you did ask this question. So if you can't go no contact because you have kids, what do you do? Um, I so that's a very real thing. And okay, the short answer is you go what's called limited contact, not contacts, but contact. Go limited contact, which is where you can just keep it very like business mindset. Like we talk about the kids and that's it. And if they start to veer the conversation another direction, you just politely exit the conversation at that point. There's gray rocking and there's yellow rocking and there's all these fancy terms, but essentially you just kind of treat it like a corporate relationship. You can keep things cordial, especially like for the kids. You don't really offer them a lot of information about you or what's going on in your life, but here's the important part. And again, I'm gonna repeat this a lot. You have to have some sort of wellness plan for you. And the reason why that is important is because you are going to be constantly exposed depending on your situation. And everybody's situation is unique according to what they're dealing with. Um, you're going to constantly be exposed to a person that caused you trauma, and you're never going to like it. You're going to learn how to manage it, but it's never going to be a fun thing for you to do or for you to deal with. So, especially if you have like a consistent schedule where you know you're going to see them every other weekend, for the exchange, or whether it's like you go to soccer games or like whatever it is. If you have that, then you actually have the opportunity to prepare yourself for those because you know what's coming up. And I always recommend people have some sort of routine that you do before you see them and after you see them. Um, what is that? That's weird. We're gonna block that. Sorry, got distracted. That was just really weird. Um, man, these like bots and stuffs, they're getting creative. Anyways, um, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so you want to have like a routine that you have to prepare yourself for that exposure. So yeah, I know. I just blocked it. I just hadn't seen it before. That hadn't popped in my life before. So I was just like, man, they're getting creative. But thank you. um, so whether that's, you do a journaling exercise, whether it's you do a deep breathing exercise, whether that is you spend like an extra, do something fun with the kids or something that, again, it's something that pours into you. And if you have it, well, I'll get to that in a second, but do something before, and then you need to have something after. And that can be like your detox time. So whether that's you sit in a bubble bath by yourself and your candles and all of that, whether it's you have a like dinner date arranged with one of your friends afterwards, whether it's you just go on a long drive, you need to do something that gives you the mental space to let any emotions that you have come up so you can process them and deal with them, and also continue to work on not internalizing their actions as a reflection of your worth, because it never is. It's always a reflection of theirs. But having some sort of routine before and after to kind of manage that is going to be really helpful. The first journal I ever wrote is called the Wellness Will Journal. And what this journal is, it's really good for people that are trying to establish a wellness routine or just figuring out things that are meaningful to you and help create habits and routines that are healthy and supportive of your mental health. This was by far like it changed the trajectory of my healing when I was going through this, because this was one of the practices that I did every single day for 6 weeks. Um, and essentially what it does is it helps you create these categories of activities that pour into you. So it's like your physical health. I did a mental health section. I did a spiritual section. I did a family time, a friends one. And everybody's categories are different because it just depends on what's meaningful to you. And then you write down different categories in each one of those. And then you plan these activities out over the course of the week or the month. So that way you are taking care of yourself in a balanced way. And that's coming in multiple different avenues. So that way you aren't dependent. Like, okay, why I say this, I have a really good example of this. I used to work in a tanning salon for years. And a lot of my regulars, they would come in and tanning was like the one thing that they did for themselves. Like that's it. That's the only thing that they did to take care of themselves. So it's and I don't mean this negatively, but it's true. Like you want to see some people go psycho, like work in a tanning salon. Like some of the things I saw in there were wild. And here's the thing. So like literally people would come in, and if somebody was in the room that they wanted to do, they would freak out and they would yell at me and they would say like, well, you put someone in my room, so I guess I'll just do it. Like, first of all, it's not your room. Like, anyways, but why do people have this like dramatic and over the top responses to stuff like this? It's the only thing that they do for themselves. So when something goes wrong or it doesn't go according to plan, they have this like overly emotional response to something that in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big. Like it's tanning. Like you can go do it in your backyard for free. But It's the only thing that they do. So having this like balance practice to where you're taking care of yourselves in multiple different ways, it prevents something like that from happening. So that way you're not dependent on just one source for your wellness and for your self-care. Um, so anyways, that's what, if you're having trouble like just knowing how to do this, or you need help in creating a wellness plan for you, I would absolutely recommend that journal. It helps you refocus and helps you create a wellness plan for yourself. And again, it's called the Wellness Will Journal. It's in the link in my bio. All my stuff's in the link in my bio. Go straight to my website. Oh, this is a great question. So I haven't gotten this one before. So is it normal to lose your spirituality in a narcissistic relationship? Love this question. I think it absolutely is, but I also think it's equally important to reestablish that, because when you're in narcissistic relationships, it literally strips you of your whole concept of self, because your concept of self ends up being wrapped up in this individual, to where you can't even see yourself outside of them or see what your life would look like outside of them. And I absolutely lost touch of my spiritual life when I was in my relationship. Now for me, my spiritual life is very rooted in Christianity, and that's how I was raised. And I completely lost touch of that. Like it was weird because like at the beginning of the relationship, and I think this was something that he was mirroring. Actually, I know it was. Like we went to church and stuff at the beginning, and he would like, oh God, I just remembered this. Like I remember when we were walking into church the first time together. It was also one of the first times that I'd gone to church after coming out of the closet, and it was a very scary step for me to make. And he kept trying to hold my hand, and I told him like, I'm not ready to do that. Like I'm not comfortable to do that in church. Like I'm just lucky that I'm here. And he just continually kept trying to do it. He was like, I don't care what these people think of blah blah blah. I'm like, well, that's great for you, but I'm not there yet. So he kept trying to push me out of that boundary and force me out of it. And and that was like, it should have been a huge red flag for me. But for me, it was just like, well, he's been on a long time. I haven't. So I can understand why he feels that way. But he kept twisting it, and he was like, stop trying to put me back in the closet. I'm like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm just not comfortable doing this yet. This is one of my first times going to church since coming out. It's hard enough for me to be here. I'm still trying to figure out where I'm at with God. So I don't want to do this. And it has nothing to do with you. Like, stop making it about you. Um, but over time, I like kind of stopped listening to worship music. I didn't really have a prayer life. Wasn't going to church. I was mainly because I was exhausted, and I just was exhausted. Um, and that was one of the things that I really had to start incorporating back into my life. And I questioned God a lot. I questioned why. I don't even like saying this because it's not a good mindset to have. But I would be, how could you let this happen to me? Well, He didn't. Like I think that God also, and I'm sorry, I don't want to get necessarily too wrapped up in like my beliefs, because I know everybody doesn't have the same thing, and that's okay. But I don't think that God like allowed this to happen to me. I think that He gave me free will to make my own choices, and my choices weren't good ones. But what I noticed is when I started to think back on the relationship, I saw how God was still protecting me throughout the relationship, even though I was in it. And this was just a whole journey for me about my spiritual life. Because the reality is it could have gotten so much worse. Um, but it didn't. Oh, I'm getting emotional talking about it. It could have been so much worse. It should have been so much worse. Um, but He was still protecting me. And there was this particular moment that I had, and I just broke down, just seeing how He was still there and He was still present. Sorry, guys, I hate crying on camera. But about a month before I broke up with him, which was like the big event. It was the worst that it had gotten. I had this dream, and this dream was like so incredibly vivid. Um, I won't go into the details of the dream, but let's just say like I woke up in a complete panic. The dream ended with and again, this was the dream. My ex was lunging at me like he was attacking me. That's what I woke up to. So I woke up completely in this. I mean, I was freaked out. He was laying right next to me. Like it was so real. And I still remember the dream to this day. Fast forward a month later, the big final event that happened, it actually was, and I'm not kidding, I'm not exaggerating. The details of that night were the exact details that were in my dream. And the way that he lunged at me, the way that how he was laying down, what he was wearing, I'm not kidding. It was exactly what it was like in the dream. And I had forgotten about that dream. And that was one of my realizations that God was still there for me, because that dream I 100% believe was from him to warn me about what was coming. Because when that event happened, in a weird way, I was kind of prepared for it because I stopped the event before it got worse. Because of my dream, I was like, oh, I know this is where this is going. I've got to stop this, because if I don't stop this, I'm going to get hurt. And I kicked him out that day. My ex was chronically cheating on me, like hoeing around. I never caught anything. God was protecting my health, So there was all these ways where God was still protecting me. Um, I I'm sorry. I went on like a 10-minute thing about this. I was not expecting to get that into it. But regardless of what your beliefs are, if you share my belief system or not, that's okay. But we all have some sort of spirituality in our life, and it's important for us to have that. Work on reestablishing that, because it is such a core part of who you are, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's, you believe in the universe and all of that. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. What I am telling you is whatever your practice is, please start incorporating that back into your life, because it is such a core part of you as a human being. And that's why one of my categories in my wellness wheel that I did was my spiritual life. And I just started doing things like praying again and being grateful that he was there when I was there, or even when I didn't think he was there. I started listening to worship music again, and all of that. So thank you for asking that. Sorry that was such a long, such a long answer, and but it is what it is. I just ordered your book recovery toolkit. Oh yay! Please message me when you get it and let me know your process on it. I don't even have my own copy of it. I need to order it, but it literally just was launched like a couple days ago. Hello. Okay, let me go through and see if there was any other questions on that. Honey, your eyebrows are on point. Thanks. I actually need to go get them touched up. I get them threaded because my skin is so sensitive. I haven't got my eyebrows waxed in probably 4 years, because the last time I had it done, like the skin right here, like literally ripped off. It was awful. It looked like I got into a cat fight. So I hate getting them threaded because it feels like voluntary torture. Not only am I going to allow you to sit here and scrape this thread across my skin, but I'm going to hold my brow for you and take an active role in my torture. So I hate it, but it does last longer and it's not as harsh on my skin. Okay, y'all. Sorry, I'm catching up on comments. Oh. Mm-mm. I appreciate you guys like being vulnerable in here and talking about your struggles too. Okay, so sorry, I'll answer this real quick while I'm looking at it, but I just got another comment or question over here on Facebook, which is, how do you know you're ready for another relationship, or at least to try again? Sometimes I'll just be honest, sometimes you're going to think you're ready and then you try and you realize you're not, and that's okay. Um, I think for the most part, I know this is probably not the answer that you're looking for, because they can't necessarily give you like here's the 3 signs that you're ready to date again. I'm sure someone's done that at some point, but I think for the most part, you'll just know. And here's the one thing I will tell you: don't let anybody try to convince you to start dating before you're ready. Because I had some people tell me the whole like sassy line of, um, well, best way to get over a man is to get under a new one. Okay, well that's cool, but it didn't work for me in this instance. So you'll know when you're ready, but you'll also know when you're not. and just be okay. Like, be okay with whether you're ready or not. Oh, someone's over here talking about cryotherapy on TikTok. I'm a huge fan of cryotherapy. Um, Cryotherapy actually is, well, I should probably like get scientific research to back what I'm saying. I will tell you from my experience, it was a natural way that helped me with my insomnia because I have horrible insomnia. It helped me with it was kind of a natural anti-anxiety for me. And here's the thing, I didn't know how much it was doing for me until I stopped doing it. There's a place called and like it well, yeah, it's used by a lot of athletes for inflammation. Thank you. Inflammation like like joint pain and that kind of stuff. And yes, it did help me with that because I do work out quite a bit. It helped me more with joint pain than it did with muscle pain. I found like heat therapy works better for me on muscle pain. But like I will tell you this, like I used to work at a day spa where we did cryotherapy, and I will tell you that there were parents that brought in their child that had, I don't remember what it was, so I don't want to misspeak. I know that there were people that were coming in that had like mental health problems and even sensory issues. Um, and cryotherapy was actually part of their treatment. So you can, I just be careful with Google. Google doesn't always have like the most. You can actually go to Google Scholar and see if you have access to anything from there. Um, I know I have access to Google Scholar because I'm in grad school, so I don't know if the general public does, but you can look up. It's been used for a ton of things. It was started as like a replacement for cold baths, like ice baths, because ice baths are miserable. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of that, and I'm also a really big fan of infrared saunas. Those also help, just like detoxing, but they help me with my sleep and all of that too. So I, only thing I miss about working at that place was being able to do that kind of stuff because I never took anxiety medication. I'm not against it. I just everything I was doing was working well enough for me. But when I wasn't doing cryo as often as I used to, that's when I was like, oh, it really was helping with my sleep. Oh, it really was helping with me with my energy levels. And you can burn like a lot of calories in 3 minutes too, so that's never a bad thing. But there's a lot of places where it's pretty affordable. Um, I know where I live, CryoNation is a big company, and I'm not endorsing particular companies because I've never been to them. But just you can Google it. A lot of people have like intro rates and stuff. Um, anyway, sorry, I saw that and I was like, "Ooh, cryo! I love cryo." Let's see. Sorry, y'all. I'm scrolling, trying to see if there was a question I could answer. What is a good first step when you finally realize you live with a narcissist? I have a therapist. Ooh, a good first step. I think the first step is making a decision of what direction you're wanting to head. Is it to stay and learn how to manage this relationship, or is it to leave? That's the first decision you have to make because that decision directs everything else. Nobody can tell you that answer. Um, you can only decide that for yourself. But for me, that's the first decision. Okay, now that I'm aware that this is the issue and this is why things are the way that they are, do I want to stay and figure out how to manage it, or do I not want to deal with this anymore? And I think that is the absolute first step. And once you can decide that, then you can put a plan together based on which route you're going. Ow! That's why I shouldn't play with. I found this like now that I moved, I'm finding all this random stuff as I'm going through everything, and I found this like little pocket toolkit, and I just pinched the crap out of myself with this because I have not used this, so I'm not sure how it works. We're gonna set that down. The last thing I need to do is injure myself on live. Okay. Okay, I have about like 10 more minutes, and then my kids are having some time at their grandparents' house today. So I'm gonna leave in about 15 minutes to go pick them up. So, oh, I saw someone ask about how to deal with a narcissistic father. Follow Catherine Kleiss, and it's Kleis, and Catherine with a K. Follow her. She talks about she was raised by a narcissistic father. She talks about it a ton. So I would highly, highly recommend following her. I haven't talked about that. I've talked about. Oh, hold on. Sorry. Oh, I love this question. Okay, is it normal to be torn apart when he moves on, even though you are glad you left? Absolutely, it is. Because here's the thing: a lot of times they move on really quick, and we have this kind of duality of feelings that exists in our mind because part of us is glad, just like you said, we're glad that we're out and we're not the one in the cycle anymore. But then there's this other part that still just feels completely betrayed because one of the things that we just want to know, and I have clients in my one-on-ones ask me about this sometimes. They're like, is it bad that I'm like offended he didn't try to Uber me? And I'm like, well, no, because ultimately what we all want to know was just that we mattered and that we were somebody or we were something to them, or, that there was some element of it being real for them because it was 100% real for us. Like we did love them. Even if we loved a false version of them, we loved a version of them. Um, and it was real for us. And so we feel this like ultimate betrayal when they move on because it's like, wow, am I that easy to get over? Like, and especially for me, like I was more offended that he moved on so quickly, not even just because of me, but like I have 3 kids and my kids are freaking awesome. And it's like, you can just get over me and my kids like that fast. Are you serious? Like it was highly offensive. But you know what? Like I had to kind of just bring myself to reality to realize like narcissistic people are like some of the most codependent people in the world. Like they don't know how to they because they need it. That's why it's called a supply is because they need that. Like they have to have that to feed off of. It feeds their ego, it feeds their power and control, it feeds their need to be significant. Like it does all of that. So they can't do life on their own. Um, and even though I didn't want to do life on my own, I could. It was okay. It's okay to want somebody, but I didn't need somebody. Like I'm gonna build a great career for myself. I have 3 amazing kids. I'm dedicated. I'm hardworking. I didn't need anybody to complete my pie. I could find someone that was like the cool whip to take it to the next level. That's great. But if they're not doing that, then they're only taking away, and that's not what I need. They can't do that. So yeah, it is 100% normal. And you just have to remember like the nice thing and the biggest positive about them moving on to somebody else is that it deters them away from you because they have to focus on this new supply, the new cycle. So it is actually one of ultimately the best things that can happen for you, but it's still okay to feel the way that you feel. Just know where it's coming from and know that there is this like it's okay to feel betrayed, but just remember that ultimately everything that they do has absolutely nothing to do with you. Like they would be doing this to anybody. So it has nothing to do with what you did or did not do. It's just who they are. So I was a single dad. I'm not anymore because I'm engaged. But yes, I was a single dad for a little while. I'm from Poland. Oh my gosh, hi. What do you do when a narcissist comes back and tries to amend? I'm choosing my words carefully. I can't tell you what to do. It's not my job. Um, I don't. Oh, I'm trying to choose my words carefully because I don't want to come across as a bitch. But I have a really strong opinion on that, and my opinion is like, there's a lot of things I would consider. How long has it been? Like, because change doesn't happen overnight. What's the motive behind them trying to make amends? Um, because most of the time, the motive to make amends is to hoover you back in. There's some couple people commenting on TikTok saying run. I don't disagree with that. Um, and you know what? If ugh, yeah, I question that a lot. I don't unless I know for a fact that it's been a long time that they've been in therapy and working on themselves. Because here's the thing, like I'm in the mental health field. I really do believe that anybody can change. I think it's a lot harder for certain people to. And there's certain populations where it's very difficult for them to and very unlikely that they ever will. Sorry, I'm just like, I don't want to be too sassy about it because again, it's not my place to say what you should and shouldn't do. Okay, so yeah, they were a best friend, and I don't know if I'd comfortable even being basic friends with them again. That tells you all that you need to know. Regardless if they are making amends or not, or they're trying to, there's like, look, you are not required to invite anybody back into your life that has harmed you on a consistent basis. If this person in your life did more harm than good, you are not required to invite them back into your life. And you're also not required to accept their amends. Like, you're really not. Like, okay, so here's where I'm getting that from, too. Um, I watched the show called Mom, and it's all about this mother and daughter who are alcoholics and they're going through AA and all this kind of stuff. And there was actually a scene in there that was like so on point for me where the mom was trying to make amends with somebody and she was ready to make amends, but the other person was not ready to receive it. And her sponsor was just like, um, well, I'm sorry, it wasn't her sponsor. It don't matter. Her fiance was just like, well, just because you're ready to make amends doesn't mean that she's ready to receive it. And you know what? That's so on point because you don't have to receive their amends because a lot of times, like if they are trying to do it, they're trying to clear their name, or there could even be some sort of manipulation tactic to where they're like, "Well, see, I tried to apologize to her, but she's still not letting me back in, so she's the problem." You know, so you can just be polite and be like, "I appreciate your effort in making amends. Have a nice life." You can be polite, but I would be very cautious about inviting it back into your life. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be ugly. You say thank you. Maybe even be grateful that you got it because most, even if there is some sort of ulterior motive, because a lot of us don't get that. And you just take that, allow it to add to your personal peace bubble, and you keep them out of that bubble. That's my 2 cents. Sorry it took so long to get there. I was just really trying to choose my words wisely. Ah, see, y'all know Mom. I love that show. Like that's my show that's like on the background all the time. My fiance and I love it. And okay, here's the other thing too. If you've never watched Mom, watch it because they do it, and then it's funny. I think I know I connect to this show so much because one of the things that kind of like got me where I was is the skits that I used to do. The mind, well, I still do them every once in a while, but the Mind of the Narc and the Narc Hotline skits where I like show these things, but I try to do it in a funny way, like keep it serious, but it's comical. You watch Bonnie. Like Bonnie has amazing growth in the show. And I think her narcissism is attached a lot to her addiction. But like she even says in the show that her therapist says that she's a narcissist. Really watch what she does because it's funny, but it is so on point too. Like because it's delivered in it's a comedy show. So I mean it's delivered in a way to make you laugh. But if you really look at it, it's like, oh my God, that's so freaking true. That's exactly what they do. So okay, so I'll talk. Um, I only have a couple minutes left, so I'll address the co-parent thing really quickly. But for co-parenting, some good creators to follow for that. You can follow Stronger Than Before, La Disco Mama, and Roller Coaster of Love. All three of those guys talk about co-parenting quite a bit because they're actually living through it. I don't live through it, so I can't give firsthand experience. But what I can say is make it as limited contact as possible. Keep all your communication written as much as possible. And the communication that you do have, keep it about the kids. And if they try to steer it another direction, you can be polite, but just exit your way out of that conversation. They don't need to have access to all of your life just because you're co-parenting. And then another aspect of it is learning how to not internalize their actions. Never talk bad about them in front of your kids. That will absolutely get out and it will absolutely be ruined, or not ruined. It'll be turned against you. And that also just helps you down the road with your own kids too, because your kids are going to wake up one day and they're going to realize who was manipulating them and who was not. Keep that in mind. But find a way, and if you have trouble with this, either consider my course, which is Narcissistic Recovery Toolkit. It's a 7-week course that walks you through all these sort of strategies to do this, or you can also DM me if you have questions. But find a way to not internalize their actions as a reflection of your own worth, and build your own concept of self and learn how to manage your triggers and manage your emotions and all of that. Because the better thing, when you can learn how to emotionally safeguard yourself, then you can do your kids the best service possible, which is passing on those tools to them, because they're going to need it at one point in time. So okay, guys, so I do have to, I'm so sorry. If I don't cut it off now, I will be late picking up my kiddos. So thank you guys for this. Y'all had some like phenomenal questions this live. It was great. So I appreciate y'all asking those and being vulnerable and letting me be vulnerable. And I hate crying on camera, but I did it, whatever. I have people all the time that say like, hey, will you let me know when you go live next? I've tried doing the whole schedule when I go live. It just doesn't always work because of how my life goes. Most of the time my lives are really spontaneous. But if I do actually schedule lives, I will let you know when those are, but I'll just be honest. It's hard with me being in grad school and having kids and having a fiance and all that. Like sometimes I just sneak it in when I can. But I appreciate you guys being on here. Don't hesitate to reach out if you guys have questions. Again, all of my resources are on the link in my bio, my online course, my journals. I have group coachings. My next one's coming up in August 1st. I have one-on-ones, all that stuff. If you have any questions on anything that you see, don't hesitate to reach out. Outside of that, I genuinely appreciate the support that you guys continue to give, and the feedback that you give me. And I always say I'm sorry you relate to my content, because that means we have a shared experience, but I'm glad that I can validate and clarify and also just not allow you to not feel so alone. And even if the only part of your healing journey that I am is you just watch my videos and leave comments and all that, and we never work together or anything, no matter what capacity it is, I'm always just really appreciative of being a part of your healing journey. So thank you guys for the support, and so much love to you guys. And just remember that you are worth so much more than they were ever capable of giving to you. So stay safe, stay strong, and be balanced. And I will see you guys on the next live. All right, y'all. Have a good day. Bye. Maybe if I can prick the right button.